Welcome to this meeting on how to best secure important and sensitive data inside and outside Microsoft Cloud. My name is Atle Schekkeland, CEO of InProtection, a Microsoft partner specializing in data security and data governance for 365 and beyond. So before we share how to best secure and sensitive and important data, let's first look at the risk picture. According to research, 83% of organizations experience more than one data breach in their lifetime, with 20% of data breaches being caused by internal actors with an average cost of 15.4 million when a malicious insider is involved. The potential cost is very significant and cannot be ignored. And recent Microsoft research also shows that 80% of decision makers purchase multiple products to meet compliance and data security needs, and majority of them buy more than 3 products. There is also an opportunity here, not only for cost savings, but actually to look at platforms instead to, better control and secure data. Because managing a fragmented approach, that increases complexity, also cost. So what are the risk picture also? To mitigate this, you need an overview of your data. The 3 primary scenarios for data security events. If your organization does not have visibility into its data, the data risk of misuse, exfiltration, exposure, etc. goes up. If a user has malicious intent and tries to exfiltrate the data, and if the user unequivocally takes a sensitive document and makes it visible by mistake. So both malicious or accident incidents happen. And how do you address this? To help you really solve your data security challenges, organization needs to implement additional controls, including preventing unauthorized use of data across workloads, protecting sensitive data throughout this lifecycle, and understanding user activity around the data. You need to do all 3 to strengthen your data security strategy, and Microsoft solutions with InProtection can help. To summarize, your task is to secure your data. So look at this as the outermost green circle. That's basically all the different data you have in Teams, Exchange, could be file servers, could be different also solution in a hybrid world. Some of this data is sensitive and needs to be identified to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but also storage limitation and data minimization according to laws and regulations such as GDPR. And some of the data is records or documentation of decisions, documentation that ensures operation or that we can continue to operate. And of course, in addition to that, might even exist some privacy data. And we need to know what is sensitive, what's important, the records here, to be able to manage that better. So what then needs to be done? 3 tasks. For 1, automatically detect and classify data and prevent unauthorized use across apps, services, and devices. 2, understand user intent and context around sensitive data to identify the most critical risk. And 3, enable adaptive protection to assign the correct data loss prevention policies to high-risk users. And for Microsoft, this is done with Microsoft Purview, information protection with sensitivity labels that tag the sensitivity of information, but also Microsoft Purview data loss prevention and Microsoft Purview insider risk management. And you need all 3 defenses to effectively secure data from potential data security incidents. And they worked better actually also together. For example, if you use information protection and data loss prevention together, you can detect and automatically classify your data and prevent its unauthorized use. And by using information protection and insider risk management, you can understand user intent around sensitive data to identify the most critical data risk in the organization. Another example is if you use insider risk management and data loss prevention, you can enable customer or adaptive protection that assigns appropriate data loss prevention policies based on the user risk level. And Microsoft Purview, that also goes beyond information protection, data loss prevention, and insider risk management. Purview is a solution that automatically detect and classify data, preventing unauthorized use across apps, services, devices. And these are the 4 solutions left on the left of the slide here. Purview is also a way to understand user intent and context around sensitive data to identify the most critical risk. And these are the 3 solutions on the right of this PowerPoint slide here. So let's dig into this a little bit more detail. Microsoft Information Protection uses sensitivity labels to classify the sensitivity of your information. This depends on an effective security classification model, and here are some tips for how to do so. And by the way, before I go through the tips, what you see on the left-hand side is what used to be the English government security classification model, and they decided actually to modernize that for the digital age to make it more scalable and also be able to better automate it. And what you see on the lower left side is then implemented here with sensitivity label. But the key is the security classification model, and that is the 10 best practices that you have on the slide here. So one is to ensure that you only have a top level classification. Keep it as simple as possible. Only have sub-levels when it's justified. For example, a simple model could be public, internal, sensitive. And sub-levels could be the different type of sensitive information like privacy data, commercial information, IPR, and so on. Ensure the naming makes sense. Link also access to your classification level. People understand, for example, that internal, that could be something that any negligible consequences if unauthorized access, everybody can have access, or everybody should have access to ensure knowledge sharing. Also ensure that naming makes sense for users. For example, does it make sense to use the term open or public? Public, we often found, is perhaps something people understand what's the difference. Also ensure what the keywords or phrases for each classification. That helps to educate users, but also helps the tools automate against it. And if people don't have the clearance to work with top secret or highly confidential information, then not make that label or class available for them before they've gone through that process of background checks, these type of things. Similar for the other end, if you have an open or public label, that might only be somebody in communication and others that should have access to use that. The rest work with internal. And decide also what you're going to require from users. Are we going to force them to actually manually select this on every file? And if so, would that be acceptable for them? Or do you need to actually have them more validate based on politics that pops up and guides users to make the right decision when things are not what the default should be? And also when you do this, ensure that you start on the basic security level, on the lowest one, and then add additional protection levels per classification level. And lastly, ensure that this doesn't stop the business. So we often recommend to start implementing this in detect mode without actually disrupting any business. That also gives us insight, and then we can use that to actually add more and more protection. And when we also understand better the use cases for external sharing. So automation is key to success. And I mentioned earlier that the first task is to detect and classify data automatically. This can be done in Microsoft Purview based on keywords, exact data match, text patterns, machine learning, and so on. This way, the information can get the right sensitivity label based on how sensitive information is. Same to understand the user's purpose with the data. For example, are they suddenly downloading a lot more files? Are they sharing files with to their own private email? And especially if they're doing this just after leaving handing in the resignation. So what do we do at InfoTection? How can we help them to get this started? Based on best practices, we develop a quick start kit. Standardized user stories, design template to basically be able to implement this in 6 to 8 weeks. And in addition to that, we have operational extensions. These are solutions that embrace and extend Microsoft Purview to not only manage information in the Microsoft Cloud, but also third parties and on-premise solutions like file servers, SharePoint on-premise, and so on. There's also additional dashboard, additional solution to actually make Microsoft Purview one solution to govern and secure all your data. But here we'll focus on the quick start. What are the ways to actually get a baseline for data security, data governance implemented? And here's the framework. It's basically starting with 5 steps that can go over 6 to 8 weeks. Starting with validating objectives and key results. We come prepared with standard user stories, acceptance criteria, and then modifying those to establish a data framework baseline. Then we put that into production tenant in detect mode, and adjust it to see we can automate as best as possible. Before then involving some business users just to get feedback, see also the necessary change and planning the further implementation for the rest of the organization. So this is basically the first step to basically get this up and running to better secure and govern your data. So what are the key outcomes that comes from this 6 to 8 weeks journey? One is to, protect data based on its content sensitivity and will establish desired sharing controls to reduce the risk of oversharing and exposure. So in short, reducing the possible blast radius of sensitive information. Should this just be to the people that are receiving it? Should it be available to people in the organization? Should it also be with trusted partners? Or should it also be available outside the organization? The second thing is to prevent data loss based on established rules to only data transfer sharing through an allowed list of sequences and transmission channels. Here's basically using Microsoft Purview data loss prevention, to basically then also provide policy tips and even stopping users from doing something. But in the beginning, it's more in the detect mode until we better understand what are external sharing scenarios of sensitive information. 3 of the outcomes is to protect company value when an employee leaves and or uses identified as high priority to work with most sensitive data and process. Here we use Microsoft Purview inside risk management to identify and mitigate threats coming from the organization, whether they are accidental or malicious. And this helps organization proactively manage inside risk to data and operations. So those are the main 3 outcomes. But in addition to that, we often also go into data lifecycle management to basically ensure that we keep what we need and delete the rest. We use then Microsoft Purview, data lifecycle management, but also records management. And for conversation and chats, we recommend use shorter retention for one-to-one or group chat in Microsoft Teams, and use longer retention on post and conversation in Microsoft Teams channels. But also for communication using email, establish an architecture for ensuring that emails that has value, either business or regulatory value, are accessible for those that need it, and manage to ensure its authenticity, integrity, reliability, and availability. But emails that are not have value, that are more transitory, work in progress, that are deleted automatically once they become redundant, are obsolete, or trivial. While for files, it's really ensuring we classify those that has business value and keep them according to our file plan retention schedule, while files that do not have value, delete them once they become trivial, obsolete, redundant. And by doing this, one of our large customers, they're now deleting 1 billion emails and files per year automatically based on this approach. So what are the steps that you have to go through that will help you? Starting with the first week, which is then establishing the vision, roles and responsibilities, planning the engagement, but also then starting identifying the use cases and the requirements. We come prepared with the already established the standardized use cases, acceptance criteria for different personas, and we then managed to speed up the process, tuning and improving that, making it just figuring out what this means for you. Second week is often then going into sensitivity labels, that's using Microsoft Information Protection. Then next after that, we have data loss prevention, also more and more automation before moving into insider risk management and data lifecycle management. And having this together, it's then a pilot evaluation and plan for further implementation to ensure that coming out of this, we're ready, we learned, we have it into production, and we're now ready to do enterprise rollout. A couple of things I want to emphasize around this. Our recommendation is to crawl before you start running. Crawl meaning that you configure labels, make them optional, supported by communication. You don't stop the business, impact the business. You learn from the business based on the alerts and in the Purview portals and solutions. And once you have that, then you implement automatic classification, more communication when people see to guide users around it. For example, policy tips. And when you have that, learn that, then we can step on the gas and run and actually ensure that we manage, protect information and identify users with malicious or just doing silly things. So this process actually doesn't require much effort on your side, but you need somebody on your side to be the admin with admin access to basically do the necessary communication. And we also recommend somebody that helps on communication, even though we can also take that role. For every engagement, we also try to establish what are then the KPIs, key performance indicators. I won't plan to go through this in more detail, but you can pause the recording here and read up on this if you want. Instead, I would like to summarize on how can this look like. And 6 to 8 weeks engagement here to establish a data security baseline can often be with the following objectives. It's really leveraging the E5 compliance features. It's technical guidance and activation of this in the production tenant, that both Microsoft Information Protection, data loss prevention, they could be inside risk management also, and data lifecycle management. Basically educating them about how to do automatic classification to those and guide users make the right decision with policy tips in real time based on the sensitivity of the information. And to do document then what are the procedures, what are the operational governance doing around this to go from detect mode to prevent mode, and with KPIs then of meeting it. So the objective here is to implement a solution to manage risk related to sensitive data loss by configuring automation of data classification, data loss prevention, and data lifecycle management. Some things then to consider to take action on. We have in the Microsoft Marketplace the following services established, but I would highly recommend you to consider number 3 first. And number 3 there, it's basically information protection and governance. It says there 8 weeks, but it can easily now also be done in 6 weeks, because every time we do it, we figure out ways to do it even faster and smarter. If you have any questions, need any help, would like to continue this discussion, feel free to ping me. I hope you enjoyed this small session on how to best secure your important and sensitive data, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for your attention.